Near the Latvian village of Galeni, Canadian Army Captain Marcus Kellaway and his team of newly infamous Rezekne raiders made their final preparations for a drone strike against the nearby Rezekne airport, a location lost to the Russians in the initial days of the invasion, and who were now using it as a forward operating base for helicopter and UAV operations. The raiders' target was a temporary barracks at the airport where, according to local sources, Russian aircrew and repairer units were bivouacking. The attack required precise timing, as flattening an empty barracks would be both a waste of time and waste of the last remaining Russian Lancet drone available to Kellaway, taken from a stockpile pre-staged by the Latvian National Armed Forces long before the outbreak of the war. The planned attack, as had the others carried out over the past 6 days, also required a network of support, from Latvian partisans, providing local resources and intel, to the supply of equipment through National Guard units operating in occupied territory, to satellite intelligence, when they could get it, provided by NATO elements based in Riga. As Kellaway darkly put it, it takes a village to kill a Russian. Kellaway would have much preferred to use NATO drones for the attacks, ones with instructions preferably written in English. But that was not to be. The Latvians' theory was that the black market Lancet drones would be mistaken as friendly by Russian anti-drone systems. A theory that proved to be entirely correct, as over the past 6 days, Kellaway and his raiders had carried out successful drone attacks on Russian mobile command vehicles, SAM units, and fuel stations, all without a single Lancet lost to Russian countermeasures. Despite the successes, Kellaway confided that their efforts felt entirely insufficient, that he and his team were little more than a trivial harassment to an enemy who had massacred his comrades in Rezekne. And with this last arrow in his quiver and fresh supplies yet uncertain, Kellaway had hoped for a mission of more significance. He was about to get his chance. As he prepared to launch the drone, he received an urgent encrypted message from friendly forces in Riga. It began, "Abort mission. Have something better. You're going to love it." Reading its entirety, Kellaway grinned. Loved it, he did. "24 hours earlier, before Captain Kellaway's aborted attack, 2 U.S. Black Hawk helicopters from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the famed Night Stalkers, slipped low across the Russian border near the Finnish village of Hossa. The lead pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Mike Hedgecock, eyed the terrain ahead, a seemingly endless stretch of forest and glacier-formed kettle ponds without a house, road, or human in sight. 20 miles in, he guided his flight into a small clearing near a road west of the Russian village of Tungozera. In the darkness stood a man with a single suitcase. It took less than a minute for Hedgecock to land, gather his new passenger, be wheels up, and disappear back into the night with his precious human cargo bound for Pudasjärvi airfield. Then a Gulfstream flight to a location at a CIA safe house near Oslo, Norway. There, 28-year-old Nikolai Pastukov, an information systems analyst with the Russian Federal Security Service, a man vehemently opposed to Russian President Kozak's unjustified war on Europe, formally requested asylum, and in exchange provided his CIA handler with the information he'd promised. Stored on a thumb drive were millions of FSB documents and volumes of data regarding surveillance and intelligence programs carried out by the FSB against the Russian armed forces, all at the demand of President Kozak, fueled by his distrust and paranoia of a potential military coup. Years later, Pastukov's CIA handler, Lawrence Brennan, would write in a memoir, "That day capped my intel career. For what that kid delivered were the very keys to the Russian kingdom." The information ranged from compromat of Russian military officers to network authentication codes, internal communications, shared documents, and GRU operations, processes, and contacts. It was by and large the most compromising breach of the Russian armed forces in over a decade. Within hours, the data was being analyzed, categorized and dissected by AI platforms in Langley, Virginia, and then disseminated to various US agencies, as well as to members of the Five Eyes Alliance, including intelligence and security entities in the UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. In Ottawa, Canadian Security Intelligence Service analyst Sean Welsh received an alert that the incoming data included a specific name flagged by CSIS, that of Russian Colonel Oleg Nagamov. By then, Nagamov's atrocities in Latvia were well known, first to NATO, then most recently from public news reports. The FSB intelligence revealed that Colonel Nagamov, married with one adult child, also had a girlfriend, Tatiana Kudrin, a 22-year-old living in the Kuntsevo district in western Moscow. Nagamov's dossier included photos, messages, and hotel and gift receipts spanning over 2 years. The colonel's secret may have been simple political compromat for the FSB, but its value proved far more significant to CSIS. Welsh and an assembled team quickly went to work, using the latest intel in an effort to find, fix, and finish the Russian colonel. Coordinating with other members of the Five Eyes, including the American NSA, Nagamov's girlfriend, Tatiana Kudrin, became the focus of their attention. Both Nagamov and Kudrin were careful not to use cell phones to call one another, but through the mobile devices of Kudrin's mother, an encrypted communications app was identified as Tatiana's app of choice, one that had been breached by the NSA for some time. In Tatiana's account were numerous messages and photos sent by an unidentified contact that was quickly determined to be Colonel Nagamov. His most recent photo, sent only hours before, included the text, "My temporary getaway will be our home when this is over, my love." The image itself contained no metadata of its location, but the photo included enough features for image analysis systems to determine its exact location. A large house on the banks of the Daugava River near the Latvian village of Aizkraukle, a few miles south of Lielvārde. CSIS had their find and fix, but how to turn that into an actual strike proved more difficult than Welsh had expected. Lobbing a missile at the house was simple, but ensuring Nagamov would be there for the missile's arrival required 24/7 monitoring of the location. And with NATO forces task-saturated throughout the Baltics, getting persistent orbital eyes on target was a near impossible request. A colleague reminded Welsh of the most obvious alternative: the Canadian-led sabotage team born out of Nagamov's massacre, Captain Kellaway and his Rezekne raiders. Hours later, Kellaway would receive his new mission. Thrilled at the prospect, he and fellow raider, Sergeant Roman Zioba, of the Polish Land Force 15th Mechanized Infantry Brigade, gathered their gear and through a network of Latvian civilians were smuggled to a rural area northwest of the town of Koknese, within striking distance of their target. As before, timing was everything. To monitor the location, Kellaway sent his last mini-drone armed with a camera and a small explosive device. The drone was far too small to effectively strike the house, but hidden from view, perching on a nearby power line with endless recharge, the drone could indefinitely watch the target house day and night. Hours later, Kellaway spotted his prey. Colonel Nagamov was there. Hoping for a larger impact, Kellaway first radioed a request for a missile strike from his contacts in Riga, but was told it could take 30 minutes or more. There wasn't time. It was clear from the live video feed that Nagamov was preparing to leave. Sergeant Zioba launched their one and only Lancet drone. For 7 agonizing minutes, as the drone made its terminal flight, Kellaway and Zioba watched as Nagamov's armored car was loaded, then as the colonel climbed aboard, and the vehicle began to drive away. As it turned onto the main road, the drone struck. Kellaway gave a hoot of triumph, but it died in his throat as Nagamov miraculously crawled out of the wreckage, badly wounded, but still alive. "F***," Zioba howled. "F***ing hell!" Kellaway remembered his mini-drone, armed with a small grenade-sized charge. From his VR headset, he took his last drone to flight. Deafened from the blast, Nagamov surely could not hear, but he could see. And what he saw was Kellaway's incoming drone. At first, Kellaway thumbed the controls for a kamikaze dive, but then he hesitated. For all the lives lost and families destroyed by this one man, his execution felt too easy, too quick. As Nagamov struggled to crawl to the house, Kellaway circled, just out of the colonel's reach. From his headset, and for one brief moment, Kellaway was certain that he and Nagamov's eyes met. He saw the fear in the colonel's eyes, a man who knew he was never going to reach the safety of the house. A man who knew better than most what imminent death looked like. Satisfied and done playing cat and mouse, Kellaway finally aimed his drone and drove it into his target. In an instant, the butcher of Latvia was dead. As the war continued to rage in Europe, in the Philippine Sea, 700 miles southeast of Taiwan, the Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, the USS George Washington, flagship of US Navy Carrier Strike Group 5, was battening down for an incoming storm. Its aircraft recovered with flight operations likely hampered for the next 8 to 10 hours. Aboard the ship, Rear Admiral Richard Ward was deeply concerned, not by the storm, but by the steady stream of incoming and alarming intelligence reports regarding what appeared to be a mobilization of China's military forces on a scale never before seen. For weeks, US and Allied forces in the region had been monitoring the buildup and had quietly begun implementing long since devised plans in the event China was looking to take advantage of the US and Allied commitments in Europe. For its part, statements from Beijing were direct, in that China was not on a war footing but simply adjusting for tensions in the region. As yet, US and Russian forces had not taken the fight to the Pacific, but Premier Howe made it clear that if circumstances changed, China was prepared to protect Indo-Pacific shipping lanes. Rear Admiral Ward, and many others from Japan to Hawaii and Washington, was not convinced. Satellite intelligence showed that the bulk of China's Coast Guard fleet were either at sea or preparing to be, while 5 different surface action groups, including a Fujian-class aircraft carrier, were already deployed along the coast from Hainan to Qingdao. For what purpose remained unknown, but alarm bells in Australia, Japan, the Philippines, and most of all the US were sounding. As the waves and rain pounded the USS George Washington, Rear Admiral Ward received a flash message, confirming his worst fears. It read, "China is announcing a full and immediate quarantine of Taiwan." Coming up in Season 2, the story of the next World War takes a turn to the Pacific as the conflict grows, exponentially. If you enjoy this series, please send me a YouTube thanks, or join my Flat Circle History Patreon site, where you will get behind-the-scenes access, member-only content, or even have a character named after you. Plus, it will help out John, the one guy wearing all the hats needed to make this series possible. He's one busy dude. And as always, please like, subscribe, and share this video. And thanks for watching.